Hello and welcome to the Cedar Log, the Unami Lodge 1 History Committee's podcast. This week we have an interview with Mark Reeves. Mark Reeves was a member of Delmont Lodge 43 in his youth. He was on the merger committee between Delmont Lodge and Unami Lodge during the council merger. He was a member of Camp Firestone's camp staff at Resca Falls Scout Reservation. He was also on the Cub World staff at Camp Hart, and he was a district executive for the Cradle of Liberty Council. So this spans a lot of Mark's scouting career. If you'd like to be interviewed yourself and share your scouting story and your scouting career, just contact us at history@unamilodge.org. That's an email address. And you can also contact us via Facebook or Instagram. And that is that. So before we get into the interview, we're going to hear from Anton, our camp promo guy, about one of our camps. Alrighty, Anton, take it away.
Excellent. Now tell me about Resca Falls. So Resca Falls is our Scouts BSA camp in the Poconos. It is 4,200 acres. Really beautiful property. I worked there for 3 summers of my life, and I do really love it. That is for our typical Scout summer camp, earning merit badges. We have afternoon adventures now, so it's not all day classes of merit badges, but there is adventures in the afternoon that scouts can go on, such as canoeing on the Delaware River or going to Fossil Rock and jumping into the natural swimming hole. So it's a really great opportunity for those scout troops to attend. If you can't attend with your troop, there's options to go with our provisional troop 1, so you can go up and be put with other scouts whose troops aren't attending Resica. There's also a couple high adventure opportunities at Resica for older scouts, such as Fall and Run and Paddlerama on the Delaware River.
Excellent. Thank you, Anton.
Okay, so this is Rhys Wallace with Mark Reeves. It is, February 8th, 2024. That's crazy to say. It's 2024. So this is a general conversation about Mark's scouting career. So I guess we'll start with the beginning. What made you first join scouting?
Sure. For me, it was kind of a family affair. My dad was in scouting growing up. He grew up in Casper, Wyoming, and he actually became an Eagle Scout, something my brother and I never got to. But my brother, he's older than me by 4 years. He joined scouting already. And then when first grade came about, it was time for me to go ahead and join Tiger Cubs. And not to date myself, but that was the first year that Tiger Cubs was ever offered as a program.
Oh.
So, yeah. But my dad, he ended up being my Cub Master of my pack. And then when my brother crossed over into the troop, he became an assistant scoutmaster with the troop. And then he became a scoutmaster when I was in the troop there. And yeah, so it was just what we did as a family.
Excellent. So then I know eventually a lot of your scouting experience centers around camp staff and the OA. So we'll get into, I guess, the OA first,
Sure.
Since that's came kind of first.
It did, yeah. So 1991 is when I joined the order. I was at Resca Falls. I was basically voted in by the troop. Didn't want to say no. My brother was already an Ordeal member. My father was already a Brotherhood member, and so I decided, let's go ahead and do this.
Oh, okay. So it was another kind of family affair, and you had the troop backing you too. So that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
So then you did your Ordeal at summer camp, or
no? I did it on one of the service weekends. And it was one of the first times that Elanga mats were ever kind of utilized at Delmont 43. So Elanga mat would have been somebody who was already a member of the order, who basically was kind of taking the role of Kitchkanet, where Kitchkanet says he'll be out there laboring with you and doing the whole ordeal with you. So the Elanga mats would end up doing that. Griff Watkin, he was my Elanga mat. And like I said, we were at Resca Falls, and for the service, I remember we were clearing trails. Now, I don't remember exactly where we were. I'm pretty sure we were on the Firestone side of camp, so probably around the Silver Trail. And we were definitely clearing the trail, basically getting it ready for summer camp for the Fawn Run program to run. Fawn Run was a program which would have people hiking basically all around the 4,600 acres of Fresca Falls throughout a week, doing different kind of programming. And we were basically just getting that trail set up. And I do remember we were in the process of cutting a log that had fallen over the trail, and there was a bee's nest underneath the log, and we basically just disturbed the bee's nest. I got stung multiple times running away, but even through all of that, thankfully I'm not allergic. But overall, it was still a positive experience for me.
Very good. That sounds like your typical ordeal experience. Because I was the ordeal chair for a few years as a youth, and we did a lot of trail work and all that good stuff. And occasionally we'd encounter bees. So I can relate to that story.
No fun, but memorable. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned it already, but you were involved with Delmont Lodge 43. So what was your full involvement? Like, what did you do? What roles did you have? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I first started going to OA chapter meetings. So I grew up in Havertown, Pennsylvania. So I was part of, General Wayne District, which then merged with the Mainline District, become Constellation District. And so I ended up going to chapter meetings. My dad was a scoutmaster, so he was going to the commissioner district roundtable meetings, and our chapter meetings were held at the same location. So I ended up going to those, and it was not very well attended for the chapter, but I ended up quickly becoming the chapter secretary. We eventually started a ceremonies team. So myself and then our chapter chief, who happened to be my senior patrol leader, Davis Wright, he and I actually kept the vigil together, which is kind of cool. He was in the Coast Guard Academy, but was able to get pulled out for his vigil later on. But Cameron Gingras and then Eric Peterson, who was part of the Firestone staff, the four of us became the Constellation chapter ceremonies team. It was really my first acting experience before I eventually got a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Fine Arts in theater. This was before I even got on stage in my high school for the first time, was playing Nudikit, the Guardian of the Circle. And what was funny about it was I was probably not even 5.5 feet at that point, but here I was playing the Guardian of the Circle. But I eventually became the chapter chief of Constellation, took my brotherhood kept the brotherhood in 92, and then had my vigil in 1995. So I was one of the last of that crew of Delmont Lodge before the Valley Forge and Philadelphia merger, and so the Delmont Lodge Unami merger to take place. But I was also the vice chief south for Delmont Lodge 43. To be fair, I ran unopposed. So
okay.
Yeah, I don't know why, but sure enough, I took on that role. But at the same time is when I started getting involved in theater in high school. So I was not able to hit all the lodge meetings. I still hit every service weekend. And I consistently check in with our lodge chief, Derek Philly, who was a good friend of mine through the order, really, and through summer camp eventually. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what was the job description, or what did you do as the vice chief of South?
Sure. So at the time, it was only Valley Forge Council. So you had North and South. North was basically Montgomery County. South was Delaware County. Oh. So basically, I was kind of working with the chapter chiefs of all the chapters in Delaware County, and basically helping them with their membership, helping them with making sure we get the, our brotherhood conversions, making sure we got everybody dues paid. Basically just making sure all the goals of the chapter and then all the goals of the lodge were being met. During that time, I got to run one lodge meeting. Derek was the lodge chief, was not available to be there, and I happened to be available for that meeting, which I usually wasn't. I prided myself in that it was the shortest lodge meeting I think we had ever attended as we basically kept a lot of the conversation to a minimum of some of the people who like to just kind of take over meetings. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I didn't realize you kept the vigil. So what was your vigil experience like? I know we can't talk about like the full experience.
Of course.
But tell me about that.
Yeah. So it was interesting because I had mentioned Davis Wright, rather. He was my senior patrol leader, a good friend of mine in my troop. And I was told that he was going to be getting his vigil. He was getting pulled out of the Coast Guard Academy to keep his vigil. And after being vice chief of the lodge and things of that nature, I actually had signed up for that weekend to be in the Langamet. And Griff Bakken saw me and was like, oh, you know what we're going to do, Mark? We got this new Langamet, and we're going to pair him with you. So that way he can kind of learn from you how to be in a Langamet, because I had been in the Langamet previously. And I thought that was a little strange. But then I went down to the tap out ceremony because I was expecting my good friend Davis to get tapped. And I got tapped before he did. And that was kind of a shock. I was just in complete disbelief, thinking they were pulling the wrong person up in front of everybody. Thinking, no, Davis is behind me. We both are about the same height. We both wear glasses, but he's the guy behind me. But no, sure enough, they were inducting me. Tim Cleary was my what do you call it?
Sponsor?
Sponsor, thank you. Yeah, he was my sponsor. And so he was the one that kind of get me set up for the evening. And he definitely set me up for success for all the different rigors that you have to kind of go throughout that evening.
Excellent. Very good.
And then my vigil name, Skeetnek Wisset, which basically means silent walker.
Okay.
I'm still not sure exactly why it was. I think there were a few times where I would kind of just show up. People would be having a conversation, and then I would kind of walk up, and they never noticed that I was coming up, and all of a sudden I was part of the conversation. I think that's where it came from, but I'm still not sure. Right.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Okay, so you kind of mentioned it a little bit, was the Delmont and Unami merger, and then you had the experience where you were on the merger committee.
Correct.
So if you could tell me about that.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a great honor to be part of that committee. There were 5 of us on the Delmont side of the table. There were 5 on the Unami side of the table. And just like lodge meetings, theater, I kept on getting roles in theater in high school. So that kept me away from most of the meetings. And what was really funny in hindsight is that in preparation for being part of the committee, I basically found all the bylaws for Delmont Lodge and all the bylaws for Unami Lodge, and basically found where they had things in common, found where they had differences, and had kind of suggestions about how we would kind of make up those differences between the two. And I kind of made this whole document. I printed it out, and I never showed it to anyone. I was almost embarrassed that I kind of did all this kind of homework. And so in a sense, it was kind of all for naught. But I was definitely at the last meeting. It was at the last meeting that the decision was going to be made about, well, what are we calling this new lodge that's combined? And on the Delmont side, there were definitely quite a few opinions. On the Unami side, everyone was like, yeah, we're Unami Lodge 1. We're the first lodge, and that's what we should be. But some people on the Delmont side thought that we should have maybe a new lodge, new name for a new lodge. Mm-hmm. Others thought that it should be Delmont, because at the time, Delmont had a little bit more membership, actually quite a bit more, and a lot more active participation in the lodge at that time. And then me, I had no qualms with being Lodge 1. Why not be number 1, right? So that was kind of I wouldn't say the clinching vote, but it was definitely one that got everybody on the Delmont side realizing that, oh, we're going to be Unami Lodge 1. And, hey, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Very good. So you were also on camp staff at Firestone, which you mentioned, because we were talking about Fawn Run and some of your other stuff.
Yeah.
So tell me about that experience. What made you join the camp staff?
So it started out, first of all, I was very shy up till the point where I got on that staff.
Mm-hmm.
I was not somebody who you would really have long conversations with unless you were already a good friend. But as part of Constellation Chapter, we were asked by Joe Hartnett, who was the camporee chair, that he needed some volunteer staff members. And so he asked the chapter to participate. And only 3 or 4 of us from the chapter actually kind of served. But I found it so exciting because I got to have this staff armband. That was the only thing that really showed me as being staff. It was just a little elastic band that somebody had put with a Sharpie staff. And that was really cool for me. And so I got to judge a few events, from first aid event to a trivia contest to whoever was cooking the best dinner that night. And after that event, I got a thank you card in the mail from Joe Hartnett. And he basically said that even though the chapter wasn't very well represented, he definitely appreciated my service. And so that was really the impetus to have me say, hey, is there anything else I can be on staff for? So I asked my dad, hey, do you know who we could talk to about me getting on staff at some point? Mm-hmm. So he brought me to the district picnic that year. And Nick Peterson, who happened to be on the Firestone staff, he was the rifle range director. He's part of our district. And he's like, you got to go talk to Mr. Nick. So I went over there and very shy, Mr. Nick, I was wondering if, I don't know if I could be a part of the camp staff. And he told me about, he's like, well, you're 15, so you'd be a counselor in training, a CIT, if they decided to hire you. And he's like, I just so happen to have an application here. So here, why don't you fill this out, get it back to me? And so I did right there, filled it out the best I could and gave it to him. And then I got called for an interview and I got hired as a counselor in training, a CIT, in 1993. Yeah.
Excellent. So you first started as a CIT. What other roles did you have on the Firestone staff, or were you just a CIT?
No. So I started in 93. I worked 93 to 95, and then 98 to 2002.
Oh, awesome.
So I went from, as a CIT, I was mostly with the ecology staff and the scoutcraft staff. The next year, 1994, I was hired as, and this is not something that would happen today or should have happened then, but I was a Dan Beard director that year at the age of 16. So basically the first year camper program. So okay. In the mornings, and then I would teach a little bit of scoutcraft, a little bit of nature in the afternoons. In 95 and 17, I was a handicraft director. The next 2 years, I did not work on staff, which had what would they say in sports, a contract disagreement. So I didn't come back to staff for those 2 years, but I did serve on the 97 National Boy Scout Jamboree staff there. And then 98 came back to Firestone as the commissary director. Firestone was a patrol cooking camp. So basically I was in charge of all the food distribution, so they could cook the meals in their campsites. I was also the quartermaster director, so all the camp-owned equipment, I was in charge of that. The next 2 years, I was the head commissioner, and the next 2 years, I was the program director. And in those days, the program director was the number one person in that camp.
Gotcha. That's quite a career just at Firestone.
Right. Yeah, 8 years there, which is fantastic.
Oh, awesome. Very good. So what's one of your favorite memories, or you could tell me several memories of your time at Firestone?
Sure. There were certain traditions, certainly, that we had, and traditions that I've actually brought to other places. One being the mid-meal stretch. Now, Firestone, because there's a patrol cooking camp, we all ate in our own dining hall. We had our own cook, and we basically would just eat as a group, which was great for camaraderie because you're right next to everybody that you work with every single meal. But then about 15 minutes into the meal, somebody would inevitably just shout out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we'd all just lean back and get a good stretch in, I guess making room for more food. And that's something that I actually took to Cub World when I eventually was the program director there. And also something that I brought to National Camping School when I've been on staff for National Camping School 2 occasions. So other ones, though, in the early years, we used to actually have a pig roast on Fridays.
Oh.
So we'd actually get a whole pig and it'd just be roasting all Friday long. And then that evening, we would carve it up, and that would be part of the meal that we'd all eat as a camp. But then there would also be evening staff trips. We'd go to Cool Dip or go to Little Falls after dinner was kind of over if we didn't have any evening program. But really, as a camaraderie the staff had was special. There were no real cliques on that staff other than program areas being proud of their program areas and trying to make sure that their program area was the best one in camp. So it created kind of a healthy competition among everybody on the camp staff. Very good.
So you kind of answered my question about what was the atmosphere like at Firestone.
So in comparison to Big Springs at the time, now Big Springs at the time, we're talking about a capacity of about 300 or so campers, but it was more low key than Big Springs. Like I said, it was a patrol cooking camp, which meant the staff we ate together. Since there was no dining room operation, you didn't have as many songs and cheers shouted at every meal, which actually appealed to a certain sect of troops and scout leaders. There were only 6 campsites, 7 if we had to. We had 7 in a pinch with the lakeside campsite. But anyway, everyone basically got to know each other pretty well throughout the week. We also prided ourselves on the great customer service we were able to provide, since we only had 100 to 130 campers per week instead of the 300 plus at Big Springs. But also, we weren't bound by buildings for program areas, except for our rifle range. So all of our areas had tarps and patrol boxes. So we could basically, from year to year, we could change where we wanted those areas to be to really just maximize the program that we wanted to offer in those areas.
Excellent. That's quite a thing, actually, not being bound to a building.
Right. Yeah.
I can't really imagine that because we're.
It's true. It's not something that you find in most scout camps.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, though.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So now, any camp staff, there's going to be characters or folks who stand out. Were there any characters or folks that you just vividly remember just because of the kind of person they were at Firestone?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to apologize to anyone that I've ever been on camp staff with before for neglecting to mention their names. But from that 93 to 95 period where I was really learning how to be a member of camp staff, and I was even learning from the people in charge kind of how to run that camp. If you were interested in learning how to be a leader, they were willing to talk about, hey, here's what we're doing, and this is why we're doing what we're doing, given the reason of why, given the logic behind any new policy changes or things that we're going to see in camp. But Brett Wells, he was my first camp director. He was a district executive for the council. And solid guy. Still keep in touch with him to this day. He's a huge Flyers fan, as I am. So we definitely bond over that to this day. The Petersons, I already mentioned Eric Peterson, but his father, Nick Peterson, as I mentioned, who's the rifle range director. Their brother, or Eric's brother, Rob Peterson, who's our program director. Just all 3 of them, just solid people. Carl Christensen, he was the older gentleman on staff. He was our quartermaster. And we found out after he had passed away, unfortunately, that he was stocking away gear every year because he had a quartermaster budget, and he was constantly just ordering up to that budget, and he hid the things away in the attic of Firestone Lodge. And it wasn't until after he passed that we were looking around and we found brand new Dutch ovens, we found brand new tents, we found brand new, you name it, which really helped us because we were a smaller camp, a smaller operation. We didn't get the full budget that, say, a Big Springs would get, say, a Treasure Island would get at those times, or a Hart would get at those times. Other people, John Daniel, Rob Mulligan, 2 solid guys. John ran our nature. He was just the tree-hugging hippie and really just lived up to that nature director. Rob Mulligan, who was our Scout Skills director, just really did a great job of just having that pride in Scout Skills and pride in, this is why we come to camp. It's for Scout Skills. So we talked about that kind of the rivalry we'd have between program areas, but there was nothing but love between everybody on that staff. George Costa, who was our rifle range director, Rick Byerly, who became our program director later on. These are people who were really just influential to me in teaching me about camp. But in 98 to 2002, folks, Ray Braun, who was the council camping director, who I say taught me the Jedi mind trick. And the reason I say that is I had to have a meeting with him for some reason, and he was at the Bresca Falls Ranger Station, the Ranger office. And so I walked into the office, and I heard this adult leader just railing him, just screaming at the top of their lungs at Ray. And Ray just said, "You know what? Everything is going to be okay." And the adult leader, I kid you not, says, yeah, everything's going to be okay. Ray's like, "You're going to have a great week at camp." The guy's like, "Yeah, we are. We're going to have a great week at camp." And that was the end of that conversation. And my mind was just blown. I was like, "Ray, you need to teach me how you just did that." But Ryan DiBernardo, who was our reservation director, he was just a solid dude, just really, really good at promoting us as a camp at Firestone, and really good at finding the right leaders and the right adults. The right troop leaders, right troops of like, you know what, Big Spring's maybe not the right thing for you, but come over here to Firestone, check it out. And he was really good at promoting us as a camp. But Rail Etner, who was my program director when I was the head commissioner for 2 years, he was a great scouter from Constellation District, who now lives down in Florida. The Contorno family, we had 3 of them, RJ, Nick, and Chrissy, who were just always on our staff. The Walsh family, I had 3 of the 4 of them, Megan, John, and Catherine on my staff, and they were just absolutely fantastic people. Steve Yanelli, Ben Bartos, AJ Height, Al Escherick Jr., Ian Thorpe, Kai King. These were all just people that really got what we were doing and really were leaders. Even when they were in positions where they were not a director, they were still leaders on that camp staff. But most of all, Ranger Jack Gilbert. Anyone who had been to Resca for the many years that Jack was there just knew he is a solid guy who could do everything in that camp. And what was great is he taught us how to help him maintain Firestone. So we're definitely things that we didn't have to call him for anymore because we knew kind of how to take care of some of those things. But if you just look at the staff plaques from those years, if someone lasted more than 1 year, that they were definitely a solid part of the core of that camp.
Very good. So now every camp staff member has a bias as to what their favorite spot is in camp. So what's your favorite place at Firestone?
Okay. So my favorite place, so in 1994, actually prior to 1994, our nature area, our ecology area, was on a little island that we called Eco Island. And the council, we only own half of that island. So we couldn't really go too far on that island. But in 1994, we had excessive rains upstream, so there was a bit of flooding, and it made it dangerous to actually cross the creek to get to the island. So we actually moved our nature area to a nice little quiet spot down along the Bushkill, right where it kind of bends. There's a kind of an offshoot that goes around that what we called Eco Island. And it was a nice quiet spot, rhododendron trees, just quiet, peaceful bend in the Bushkill. And I went back in 2007, I want to say, and one of the trees that kind of overhung and created a nice shade in their area had since kind of fallen over, which was a shame. But if I was ever having stress as a commissioner or as program director, inevitably you would find me down at the nature area.
Gotcha. Very good. So that kind of wraps up Firestone.
Sure.
But I'm sorry, I'm just making a note because I'm trying to figure out how to break this up into different episodes.
Okay.
Which is fine. I keep talking. I appreciate it. So, all right. So this has been it's been about 28 minutes, but that's perfect. So that's like one episode already.
Oh, wow. cut it up all you want. Having more is always good when you're editing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you served 8 years at Firestone, which is just baffling to me because anyone who serves on camp staff for that long, I'm just like, whoa, that's an achievement.
Yeah, you do it though because you love it. You're not doing it for the paycheck, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it because it's the thing to do. For me, because like I said, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in theater. And during the summers, when all my friends were doing summer stock, I was going back to Firestone. That's where my true love was. That's where I needed to be during those times. And then once I graduated from grad school, that's when that was the drop off point really for me to stop working at Scout Camp because I had to get a job, which happened to be at Walt Disney World.
Oh, that's right. Very good. So you also worked the Cub World staff at Mustard Scout Reservation. So we're going to talk a great deal about that because that's how I know you.
Sure, of course.
So, Anton, tell me about camp.
We're running a new camp at Mustard Scout Reservation, which is known as our STEM Adventure Day Camp. Now, this camp is for youth who can be 1st through 5th grade, so that's our Cub Scout age, but also for youth who are 6th through 8th grade, so in the Scouts BSA age range. But it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is involved in scouting. We recommend for any Cubs or Scouts who want to go as well, but if they have friends or members of the community who are not involved, they can attend as well. This camp is, like I said, at Mustard Scout Reservation at our Camp Garrison facilities, and it is all focused around STEM. So rockets, weather, robots, all sorts of things STEM-based. The starting price is $370 per week, but there is a rate if you're signed up with Scouts, either would be a Cub Scout pack of $325. For our older youth, it's a little pricier at $385, but the Scout rate would be $340. We're running 6 weeks of program, our first week starting June 24th, and then our last week ends on August 2nd. It's a really great opportunity for Scouts to get to camp. It's not a resident camp, but if it's something easier for parents to have their Scouts attend, I highly recommend it. And with those prices, there is also the option of transportation included, which would be busing. So that's a little bit about our STEM Adventure Day Camp.